Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, time to break down some NFL football. Damn, I'm getting an echo. How are you doing?
Dan forgot to mute. He was so diligently working on the Bears stuff. No, that's every once in a while.
It's the preseason.
It is our. We're not even into mandatory camp. Drew and I skipped mandatory veteran mini camp. We are holding out for trades. I don't know, but either way, it is just kind of jumping right into these. Like I have a major golf tournament this week. I haven't seen you tweet in like 2 days. I feel like you've been busy. Like we were just, we couldn't even do this yesterday because you had conflicts. Like it is a busy week for both of us. And we're just kind of jumping in, but it's two teams that might suck. And I'm still kind of pretty excited to talk about both of them because I have strong takes. And I think there's some things to be said about both teams. Maybe not even this year, but into the future. I think we had a strong agreement that we didn't fully understand what the Lions were doing, but we didn't hate it. Where he said, like, there's teams that have rebuilt in much shittier ways. Like they're ripping Band-Aids off and just going for it. So didn't hate what we saw from the Lions last year. And we are gonna start with the Detroit Lions. I don't know, did you have anything overarching to say before we just jump into a team?
Ooh, boy, that's a loaded question. I got a lot of thoughts about football. I've been thinking a lot more about football.
Oh God, yes.
And so, yeah, no, I think this one today is, we're starting with the NFC North here. We're doing the bottom half, at least in terms of projected finish order, which includes both the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. We're going to start with the Lions, and I think it's fair to say, we're looking at two teams here today that are trending in the opposite direction, and the Detroit Lions may not have the pieces in place to be a playoff team this year, but they have, I agree with you, they have done enough. They have invested intelligently, I think, in terms of how they've deployed their draft capital the last 2 seasons to put a bunch of young, really good players on the field for this team. And depending on, what they get out of their quarterback play, and depending on the increased, experience and belief that Dan Campbell is getting out of these guys, your ceiling for the Lions is pretty damn high, I think.
You want to hear my hope for this team?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm cheering against this team this year in order to cheer for this team, like long term. And again, yes, I'm from Minnesota. I used to have some light Vikings fandom that I've been cured of for mostly just betting too much football, but I really, really don't want to see them win like 9 games. They're not going to be good enough to, do something like – they don't have the playmakers, I don't believe, to do something like we saw in Cincinnati and take a massive leap that, there are surprise teams every year, but Cincinnati was probably a once-in-a-decade kind of thing, and maybe once in every couple decades. It's been a while, maybe since the Greatest Show on Turf, that we saw a team just come out of complete left field and really, really overachieve. But I don't want to see them do that because I want them to get their quarterback. Like that's their basic, like you said, their draft capital was used in a really nice way where they have 3 high picks on that offensive line. It could turn out to be a good offensive line. They essentially may end up having the best defensive player and the best wide receiver in the draft long-term. The ceiling for both of those guys is to be the best receiver out of this draft class and the best defensive lineman out of this draft class. So they have, as we get to the Bears and we talk about how their draft capital was expended, a lot different look. But if their offensive line plays better, it might, you might not matter if you still have Goff as your quarterback and the secondary still sucks. So I guess my hope is Goff plays good enough to make some of these offensive players look good and it's fun, but he makes enough mistakes where they lose games. And yeah, if the secondary stinks, they're going to be susceptible to getting backdoored and, losing close games again as teams are able to pass on them late in the game. And yeah, I hope they win like 2 games and get a quarterback, because then all of a sudden, imagine that if Williams pans out, they get a stud rookie, they have a good offensive line. Like, you're not talking about, oh man, the Lions might make the playoffs, win a game for the first time since '91. It's like the Lions are going to compete with the Packers next year. Is kind of where they're at if this rookie quarterback hits. So it is an exciting rebuild. That's where I'm at.
Okay, so God damn, there's a lot to unpack.
I get so much.
No, I get why you would have that take, and that should, like, if there was a practical Lions fan on earth, that would be their opinion as well. The solution is not in-house long term with Jared Goff, and if you don't have if you don't have the quarterback position solved in the NFL, then your ceiling is mediocrity. The problem is it's been so long since the Lions can point to a team that achieved mediocrity that I feel like that's a win for them.
Oh yeah, if you're
right?
if you're the management, if you're the fans, like, yeah, going like 10-7, 9-8, making the playoffs on the getting that last wild card spot. They have the longest playoff win drought in the league now. 1991, buddy. We were 7.
Oh my God.
You were older.
It was against the Washington at the time Redskins. I remember they lost in the second round of the playoffs that year. The Redskins went on to win the Super Bowl. Okay, so God damn. I feel like the Lions as a franchise and the Bears as a franchise the Lions might be in like at this similar stage to where the Bears were going into year 1 of the Trubisky experience. Okay, so the Bears at that time, really strong in the trenches, defense that just was playing their ass off. They were playing well for Nagy, and they were expected to come in and get 4th and win 4 games, and instead they win the NFC North and shock the world. And then that put the onus on the on the front office and the head coach to do it again, right? To take the next step, take the next progression. But so much of their success was predicated on weak schedule and just getting above average play out of a couple of positions that was not repeatable, that the Bears never were really able to recapture that. And then you had a front office and head coach that were increasingly under pressure that couldn't deliver because they never solved the quarterback position. And the Lions may find themselves at stage 1 of this now, based on how talented and young this roster is. And the quarterback position still being a question mark is the only thing that's really preventing me from being like, this is your obvious, no doubt sleeper NFC team in an otherwise very weak division.
That's part 2 of my argument. It harkens back to and this never came true, but we were worried about it last year, was it could turn into a spot where they start to believe in Jared Goff. Like, we worried about this with Sam Darnold. We said,
they're already saying that type of stuff.
Yeah, no. We said, what if Sam Darnold turns out to be okay? And they decide this is a good long-term prospect. Like, you're never going to reach high heights with that kind of quarterback. So another reason is if they do end up like 9-8, 10-7, get the final wild card, they celebrate having a going to freaking, I'm not sure, heading to Tampa Bay for round 1 of the playoffs and getting the shit kicked out of them. And it would be fun. It'd be fun for that fan base. It's been 6 years, I think, since they've been to the playoffs. And again, but then it turns into like, can we take the next step with Jared Goff now? Hey, we have like the 15th pick. Maybe we get another safety or a linebacker, another defensive piece. We can roll it out with Goff because there's not going to be any good quarterbacks available there, and we're not trading up. So, yeah, I don't love that, but I mean, just thoughts on 2021? Like, it kind of hashed out the way I'm talking about 2022. Like, they lost
2021.
They lost 3 games on the final play. That's perfect for granted. They didn't do everything they could to tank, but it helped them get a number 2 draft spot.
They were a covering machine. They got all their young guys lots of reps. They made the fans happy because they weren't watching a product they were embarrassed by. They were watching something that they can be hopeful about for the future. So 2021, for a team that went 3-13-1, that was like the absolute most ideal possible set of outcomes you could have dreamed. I mean, maybe you wanted to beat the Vikings twice, so you could have puffed your chest out about the the in division, right? But they ended up having they were in the second overall. They got the second overall pick, which they ended up getting a windfall, getting a local guy coming to them. It was unfortunate for them that this wasn't a quarterback-rich draft, because I agree with you. Like, this was probably their shot to address the quarterback position, and it was a bad year to have the number 2 pick, frankly. So yeah, I mean, I think this year for the Lions is going to be cautious optimism, and then we're probably talking about a little bit of purgatory for them for a while. But I think for a team and a fan base that's been suffering as much as the Lions have, a little bit of purgatory sounds pretty good. A little bit of, are we a playoff team? Maybe. Like, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
You mentioned the
So
rookies too. I read that. I don't know who to. It was I read a lot of like beat reporter stuff this week, just like trying to, because you can't answer some of these questions. Like one of the questions was like, who the fuck is calling plays? And the answer is we don't know that yet. They said, I mean, honestly, it says like they're gonna decide that probably this summer. So yeah, the 2021 season, like you said, it was a spot where we saw again, I'm trying to go back to my original point and then I forgot it. Oh, they had the most snaps by rookies out of anyone in the league. Like
yeah,
that's I don't know. You can look at that and be like, oh, is that good? It's good if you're rebuilding, because it's one of those things where, and we're going to talk about this with Fields when we get to the Bears. It is, hey, it's better to know. And it's stunk that Akuda has been injured and kind of has underwhelmed, but you've got another rookie that that might turn into a decent piece if it turns out he's not just slow, if he can kind of adapt. So they have a crazy young core that is just, again, we saw it last year, probably short of a quarterback and a little bit of experience, but the guys, like what we saw last year from the Lions was like, shit, they're playing hard. Like they're not good at tanking. They're trying to win these games. This is wild. Like it's, you can't just say, hey, we're going to go out there and lose, but you can make that sort of thing happen. And they played hard. They essentially beat a couple playoff teams late. Granted, the Packers were playing Jordan Love in the second half of Week 18, but they put up a shitload of points that week on a decent playoff team. I mean, a team that made it.
yeah.
I think the Packers were out in the second round, weren't they? I'm trying to remember now. It was Niners.
They were after a bye. They got the Packers won zero
playoff wins. Yeah, it was Niners Rams in the NFC Championship game. So yeah, the Lions, if you go back and look back, and it's tough this time of year, and you're going to see a million different ways that analysts and previews do this, but it's tough to actually tell if you have a tough schedule or not, because you can do your best guessing, but after the season, and they had a top 5 hardest schedule, and right now it is, again, it's hard to guess, but it's looking like a much, much easier schedule. So I feel that my fears will be realized and they will be a middle of the pack team. But again, they're hot in the streets on Twitter. I mean, it's everybody's favorite coach of the year play, everybody's favorite to make the playoffs, and all sorts of long shots. You're seeing a lot. It used to just be Knish doing this every year. Like he'd show one ticket and we'd all have a good laugh and it was a great bit. And now the whole world has Detroit tickets.
Yeah, and I think that, but that's like you end up on, if you're in any way, if you're any way evaluating rosters, if you're evaluating team strength, and you're looking for a dark horse in the NFC, I don't know that you can really make a case for any other team that's not expected to do well. To all of a sudden, like, to have all the pieces in place where it might work out, like that's the Lions this year. And you're right, Lara. 2021 season, we're not even really joking. Like, that was as good as it could have gone for them. They won 3 games. They got, they played their asses off every single time they went out there. They only no-showed 3 times. They got blanked by the Eagles, but that was a game where I thought the Eagles came in with an absolutely perfect approach. They no-showed against the Broncos on the road, but that was a December road game at altitude, and they no-showed against the Seahawks in what ended up being, I believe, Russell Wilson's final home game in Seattle. So like, I'd kind of give them a pass on those no-shows. Otherwise, they tried their asses off. They made life miserable for the Vikings twice, beating them once. A number of those other games that were coin flips could have gone their way, in which case they wouldn't have had the second overall pick. So Yeah, I think
When the coin
2021.
flips go against you, that's beautiful for this sort of thing. Like, do you remember
Yeah,
the Justin Tucker kick? Like, that was
yeah, it was
ludicrous,
insane.
ludicrous to lose that game.
Absolutely insane.
And you're
Absolutely
right.
insane.
They should have swept the Vikings. The
Yep.
I believe it was they could have kicked for the tie against Minnesota, and he did the thing where, hey, we suck, and we're just going to go for 2 in the win, and
Yeah.
then they got it, which is
Yeah.
not ideal again for the tank. But Minnesota had like 40 seconds left and went down and kicked a field goal, I believe, and they lost that one on the final play of the. I think they had 3. I'll just call them buzzer beaters, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I think they had 3 of those, which is
3
just
beaten at the
beautiful.
buzzer.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a hard playing team. And again, going into the season, hopeful because we saw the rookies play a lot. We saw some good things from some places. They got a super high end defensive player, and they're probably going to be better on offense. Like, this offense is going to take a step forward. Hopefully, I don't know. Again, the Jameson Williams. I don't know. What did you read on that as far as availability?
Late
Like
October.
middle of the year, kind of is kind of where we're
Yeah.
all landing on that.
Second half of the schedule, they'll have him. I would be my guess. I would
Yeah.
guess you're going to see him inserted into the lineup, maybe the Green Bay game, week 9. That's kind of the right feel for me. But I don't know that really moves the needle for them one way or the other this year. I mean, like if the offense is already doing well by that point and you throw him into the mix, and then that's bonus. Like, if you get anything out of Williams this year, that's a bonus. I think you're expecting your offense to build a little bit on what was an offense that at times showed some promise last year, really. And I think a couple of general thoughts on the organizational structure. It seems like they have a pretty analytically minded front office, which is exciting. It seems like they made in it, and Dan Campbell, it looks like they hit on him as far as a long-term answer at the coaching position. And yes, he doesn't have everything. He doesn't check every box you want checked as a head coach in the National Football League. But is he kind of a modern day representation of Pete Carroll, where he gets his guys fired the fuck up and running out there with their hair on fire every Sunday? Like, absolutely. Like, that is a quality that's valuable as far as a head coach goes. And he's not resistant to the go for 2, go for it on 4th down type of mentality. Like, he gets the stakes and the high leverage moments of the games. He got it in his gut. He didn't, he probably was getting the information from the team, the analytics team that was telling him what the right thing to do was. But, I think in a lot of cases, he kind of knew it already when there were high leverage moments and they needed to win, or, they were going to win or lose the game based on that. So I think in general, I'm fine kind of saying that they have the right front office in play, the right coach at play to surprise to the upside this season in particular. And I think overall you needed to be a little bit aggressive betting this team if you were going to bet them in the win total market, because they checked kind of the key box that all these teams always take money early in the cycle, which is that their Pythag win said that they underachieved by multiple wins, right? Like, that is a tale as old as time. You want to give me numbers early in the process, win total numbers, and ask me to predict which one is going to take steam to the good. The team that finished with few wins, that had a Pythag that said it should have been 3 or 4 higher, always takes money to the over. And like clockwork, that was the Lions this year. So
yeah, and you're right, that happens, and it's one of those too where if you ask me, like, name me a team that had underperformed their Pythag, like, first and foremost, because we talked about it 4 times already, like, they lost a bunch of games late, they lost a bunch of close games, like, their scoring differential wasn't great if you look at it from the 10,000 foot point of view, because they got the shit blown out of them by Seattle, and what was it? Yeah, the Denver game was pretty rough too. I'm looking here. Oh, it is the Bengals game early on too.
the Bengals game was bad. Yeah,
that was pretty rough too for a home game. But that's right when, like, the Bengals were starting to get their feet, and everyone's like, oh, Bengals are doing a thing here. But they did start the season 0-10-1 before heading home. Or it was the second leg of a homestand there against Minnesota. They got that win, but not much of a better start if you did have that under. I think their season win total last year was 6.5.
That's what I got too.
Yeah, 10-10-1 You
were home.
you had it. You had it. You had it. Yeah, you had it home in the minimum amount of games, which is tricky to do, but it was nice for those. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to touch on from 2021 was, and we do mention this a lot with young quarterbacks or, free agent quarterbacks, new faces, new places, where it's get him out there, figure out what you have, and get rid of him, or build around him. You have to know what you have, and you have to be willing to make a decision. A non-decision is, again, like, I don't know, I was just reading about something like this. People think a non-decision is not as bad as making a decision sometimes, even when the consequences of the non-decision are worse. It's a silly little cognitive bias we all have, but a lot of teams, I feel like, I don't want to be the guy that got rid of this quarterback. You want to be the guy who kept him and watch the team, shit down the tanker, which is, again, a lot of stuff we're getting ready for the Bears talk here, but it's something that you don't see as often maybe with coaches, although you do have the scapegoat thing where you fire them. But I was happy when they got rid of Anthony Lynn. I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think he was a good fit. I don't think it just wasn't jiving with him and Campbell. And then I don't really think we can take the splits and say, like, here's what I think of Campbell as a play caller, but he did take over play calling the second half of the season. And that's where we ended up with our new offensive coordinator as well. He kind of took a step forward. I don't think he did any play calling per se, but he was a big part of the whatever, the game planning and whatnot. So they still, and like I said, they still don't know and won't say if it's going to be, it's Ben Johnson is his name, by the way. Ben Johnson or Dan Campbell. Yeah. We do not know. Yeah. Not the Canadian doper, but
I think all the sprinters back then were.
Yeah, they all did. No offense, Ben. But we don't know who's calling plays, so that's an interesting wrinkle. But I always love seeing a new offensive coordinator in the league. I like seeing what they're gonna do.
Oh, sure, and like
full of ideas.
Yeah, here's the positive. I did like the move. I wasn't in love with some of the concepts that Anthony Lynn was running, and I do think that you have now set yourself up well for a homegrown set of skill position players who are all going to take that next step, who are all looking to get paid, who are all looking to, kind of make their name, and they're moderately good, honestly. And you have Jared Goff, who's a quarterback with some experience. He's got some tricks up his sleeve. He's got tiny hands, but when he's well protected, he can do a really decent job of operating the quarterback position. And now he's behind. Would you say this is clearly a top 10 offensive line in the NFL?
I think their ceiling is
top 5.
I mean, their ceiling might be top 1.
I think greatly. That's expecting a lot out of Penny Sewell.
Yeah, it's a lot of young guys, but their ceiling, if you keep this group together, is top 1. But yeah, this year, top 5, top 10. That's definitely. I think top 10 is where you put them, and their ceiling is higher than that. So you have that. You had a lot of nice reps out of some young receivers.
Yeah,
you've got a good offensive line. You've got a quarterback that can play indoors at least, and you're an indoor team, so that's okay. We'll get to his tiny hands when we get to the schedule a little bit, but
yeah. So let me ask you to rate who they have going out there week 1. In terms of pass catching options between DeAndre Swift as your running back, TJ Hawkinson is your tight end, and then St. Brown, Reynolds, and Chark. Weak wide receiver group, but not the worst in the NFL by far. Good tight end and running back pass catching ability. So you're talking about at least league average in terms of skill position players in the passing game, right?
Yeah, if you take, again, the offense as a whole, if you can keep Goff protected and indoors, he's above average. Your offensive line is definitely above average. Your running back, at least from a receiving standpoint, which is a big part of the whole group of all the groups, is definitely there for you. And yeah, Chark was a nice addition, and they have Cephas. And then I don't know how much I know about Josh Reynolds. I guess I'm gonna have to learn a little more about him. But
fine player.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is going to continue to be.
He showed flashes as a sick slot. Honestly,
he was very
probably
good.
if he finishes outside the top 10 of slot guys at the end of the season, I'll be surprised. Like that seems like he's going to be in that ballpark. Great, just in general, great energy around St. Brown.
And then if the Jameson pick pans out, he can pop back. I mean, again,
if you add him to the mix,
his ceiling is the best receiver in this class. And before the injury, I think he was probably lauded as the best receiver in this class. There's no probably. He was. Like, I think if you go back and look at mock drafts that were made before the national championship game, which some of you sickos are doing, he was the
number
top
one on everyone.
Yeah, he was the top receiver on the board, and I think
I saw him number one overall on some.
Yeah, they probably got themselves a steal because, again, you don't need him to give you 18. I'm assuming a playoff game, 18 games this year, 18 weeks. You're not looking to make this into a playoff contender. If it happens, it happens. But getting that as a bit of a steal, having Hutchinson will drop into your lap. Like you said, you compared it to that Bears team. Like, they're going to be good in the trenches, and they have enough skill position players catching the ball that I love Hawkinson. It's gonna be a fun little team. They're gonna be word I use a little bit too much, squirrely.
Frisky,
squirrely.
Squirrely.
They're gonna I mean, I think they're just gonna be like the pain in the ass team to play. Like, why is this team good?
Yeah, I think I mean decent. This looks like a decent red zone team. This looks like a team that you're not. Goff is not gonna make as many. Like, people think of him as a specific, quality quarterback. Like, he never gonna break into a top tier in people's minds just because of just a handful of limitations he has. But he's not a guy that's out there like taking points off the board with back-breaking turnovers a la Carson Wentz, right? Like, there's almost certainly, if there is a limitation, it's, he's not going to take as many chances. He's not going to throw as many game-breaking plays. But, to the degree you even have guys you want to be trying to do that with anyway, I don't think that's a big deal. And again, we go back to the degree that they're going to be able to offer him pass protection and a healthy unit here throughout the regular season on offense. I think this is a top half of the league offense. And I think that's not even really a question when the dust settles, considering how thin some other teams are and what injuries could do to the fabric of the league this year. So defense is a different story because it's pretty lopsided.
Yeah.
Most of the players,
the talent is
turnover.
Close to the ball.
Yeah, most of the talent is close to the ball, and most of the turnover from last year's depth chart to this year's was the kind of letting the Matt Patricia guys walk. The Trey Flowers and the Jamie Collins of the world. The Austin Bryants, the Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the Dean Marlowe. Like, those guys were all guys that the Patricia regime felt like they wanted them there. Bobby Price, Nicholas Williams, same story. So there's an enormous amount of turnover on the defense, and all that they've really invested in terms of bringing folks in. Mike Hughes, and then the draft. And the draft had some hits. We think Aiden Hutchinson could be an immediate contributor considering his pedigree.
We've talked about that in the past, just considering his position. Drew, you brought that up. I think it was I don't know if it was on a show with somebody, but maybe Dr. E. We spoke about that. It's really, really hard for defensive players to come in and make an impact immediately. You need to be a freak situation and be used right, like we saw in Dallas. But the exception to that rule is like a pure pass rusher, where you're not reactive like some of these other positions. It's so hard for a corner. Hey, guess what? You're matched up against a guy who had 100 catches for 1,500 last year, and he's a full grown man, and you have to do this. But some of these pass rushers is just like, go get the quarterback, buddy. Here's a scheme, and you do see immediate impacts from pass rushers. And if that's the case, like you said, lopsided was a hell of a term for it.
Because like, not only is there starting, I guess they're going to run a 3-4. Is that what you're getting? Is that your guess? You're going to see a lot of 3-4 out of these guys.
I think it should be similar to last year.
Okay.
Like it was.
Well, whatever the case
we're
is,
keeping. Yeah, it's no turnover on the defensive coordinator. Still Aaron Glenn, and
okay. Whatever the case is, I think they're gonna.
Similar to last year.
I think they're gonna run a lot of light stuff. I think they're gonna have a lot of nickel. They're gonna have a lot of cornerbacks on the field, and that's not because they have a wealth of talent there. It's because they're gonna need a lot of those guys out there, kind of trying to hope to cover up the holes. They kind of the first two waves of the defensive line are like solid, like bona fide players, frankly. And so you're going to be able to kind of do a little bit of a Washington football team from a couple of years ago, a Niners kind of a deal where you can really bring wave after wave of pass rush and really make it miserable for your opponents if you're going up against a team with a weak offensive line. But then you're going to get cooked on the back end sometimes, maybe often. So I think a lot of the fabric of this games is, like, I guess as good as I feel about the Lions, if the market really kind of lauds, gloms onto them after the first 4 weeks of the season and they're power rated as an above average team, am I ever going to lay points with this team? Probably not. And it's mostly just because I feel like the defense and the secondary in particular is just, it's asking for it. They're asking for it. And, a guy like Okudah could take a huge leap after all of the years he's spent now trying to learn how to play quarterback position. And I don't know, is there a year 3 thing for top tier cornerbacks?
Now in year 2 is a blown out foot. Like he didn't get,
right. He just didn't get enough reps, right?
He was slow. Year 1, he was slow. Year 2, he was even slower because his Achilles was detached from itself. And like, I don't expect a big leap. That's where I'm on the same page as you. Like, I really do think the pass rush is going to be decent and the secondary is going to be horrid. And that's not great for winning close games. Like, pass rush is very important, almost as important as coverage sometimes. But if you have 2 safeties that are pretty rough, and then again, something I jotted down about this, another guy that they lost, Reeves Mabin, like, he wasn't a big part of the defense, but if you do go to nickel, like, he played a lot of passing downs as like a decent coverage linebacker. So like everything about their coverage is going to get worse or at least stay the same amount of bad. Unless Okudah takes some step forward that we do not expect off of an injury and underwhelming performance in 2020. So
even if that happens, you do?
Yeah.
You throw away from him.
Yeah, there's other guys out there that it's like, well, this guy's not good either. And hey, their safeties are giving up huge gobs even in the run game sometimes. So yeah, it's going to be a weak secondary. And like, it's not like we're picking on this team. They're still in a rebuild. I've said a lot of nice things, but this is definitely, I'd say if you had to pick a weakness on both sides of the field, it'd be the secondary and the Jared Goff.
Yeah. In a difficult road environment, Jared Goff's not winning you that game if you need a score in the fourth quarter. He's not.
Oh, if you're if you're going up against game at home,
if you're going with maybe, I love him. If you're going up against an elite quarterback, this D is getting cooked. Which means that a lot of their success this year is going to depend on their schedule of opposing quarterbacks. So let's keep moving on. Because it's not.
So you mentioned it's an easy schedule, but again, the schedule metrics are based on certain things, and sometimes it's not always, again, the perfect matchups. Like, hey, this team isn't very good, but if you're facing a bunch of decent quarterbacks or decent passing, units, you might end up in some trouble. And, just right off the bat, Minnesota, I don't think anyone's going to get like excited about Kirk Cousins, but it's a good enough passing offense. And, same thing with Green Bay. Same thing with obviously Buffalo. I don't know what we're getting from Miami, but they have a high end.
Still, it's not very many, man. There's
weak,
not
like,
very many good quarterbacks
that's the thing.
On
so
this list.
Well, I have it like half and half. Like as far as good pass rushing, passing offenses you're facing, and it's like there's nothing in between. It's either you're facing, hey, Aaron Rodgers is coming to town, or hey, we have to cover Jefferson, or Dallas even down a receiver. That's a good one. But then from there, it's like, well, if you take all the good ones and then you go to the next, there's no like middle of the pack.
Right.
Seattle right now, if again, it could be somebody else, but it could be Drew Lock. Wentz. Again, we're high on Philly, but it's still an untested Jalen Hurts that we're not super scared of at home. Like New York, we're not scared of either New York quarterback right now. Carolina is a competition between Mayfield and Darnold. What's going on there? And then twice against the Bears. So it's like you have, let's call it 60-40 easy quarterbacks.
I would even 50, go
50,
further
50
because
aggressive.
I would go even further because the handful of quote unquote good quarterbacks who you might be scared about on this list, they're not behind especially great offensive lines. Like that's I
Minnesota,
think that's a big factor, right? Like even last year, Detroit defended Minnesota fairly well.
Yes, that's true.
Like this year should be even better. With the added element of pass rush. So, no, I think I guess I look at this schedule and I'm like, my God, if there's one team that actually has a defense that's average or bad, but by the end of the season, we're like kind of tricked into thinking they're good. Like this schedule is exactly the schedule that gets you there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This is the one that fools you.
The only thing I will say too is, and again, it's not all backloaded, but again, we mentioned two main weaknesses being the secondary, which is going to come into play when, again, they play Green Bay, they play Buffalo, even again down to Minnesota or what was the other one I mentioned? Dallas, Miami, some of those. Your second weakness was Jared Goff and and his tiny hands. And you see all those snowflakes. If you're watching this on YouTube,
I know.
That's not.
We're pulling.
There might be an eject button where it's like, hey, they should win. The Bears aren't very good, and then they go to Soldiers Field, and Goff is just atrocious. And then he's been beat up. And I'm not saying that pass rush is going to be great, but he's been beat up by just his psyche. And then they go and play Chicago on the road again, which is rough. And if they lose that game, that's not a soft landing. You get Buffalo at home. That sucks. And then again, another back-to-back at the Jets and Carolina later in the season, and then closing it out with, at Green Bay. Your only hope there is that Green Bay is a similar situation to what we saw last year where Jordan Love is playing a chunk of that game. So it's not the softest landing at the end. And again, if Minnesota performs well on offense and gets things together in the line, that's a tough out. But you do have Jacksonville, you do have Chicago at home. There's some wins in this schedule late. Like this regular season win total, I think, is pretty nice.
It's too low. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, a couple of thoughts. Our guy Patrick, they'll get another auto win in Week 18 when the Pack are resting A-Rod. I got a hot take for you. That game decides this division, in my opinion. I think that is going to be a contested Week 18 game for Green Bay for the first time in a long time. Buffalo is the only team passing offense that is complete. That scares me on this entire list, top to bottom. That is the only game where you are really going to be facing a high-flying, full-throttle offense that can absolutely rain the points on you. And that's your Thanksgiving game. But you know what? A couple of fun things about this schedule I want to point out. The Week 1, we get the kind of the analytics darling Detroit against all of the football guys darling for the season Philly.
Yeah.
Like the hot, like those are two hot teams, and they're going head to head Week 1. They're going head to head Week 1. So you'll get some extreme chest beating and or you'll get an extreme reaction from that if that's not close to the closing line, right? If the Lions win, people will be like, oh man, I was too low on the Lions because I was high on Philly and they just got beat by the Lions. And then if it's the other way around, if Philly like throttles them like they did last year, 44-6 or whatever, like you're going to get same old Lions. And then people who all kind of were high on Philly are just going to beat their chests. Like, see, I told you guys, Philly was this year's.
I love Week 2.
Was this year's team. Yeah, no. So like this one, if it doesn't come in close to the line, is going to induce some big time reactions in Week 2 for sure. So keep that in under your hat. It's fun that the Lions do not have a rest disadvantage all season. I don't know if there's any other team that has no rest disadvantages. They get a day extra to prepare for Minnesota week 3. They get a week extra to prepare for Dallas week 7, and they get 3 days extra to prepare for Jacksonville week 13. The Lions have a pretty average schedule in terms of travel because they're in the middle of the country and they really don't have to move much. They're playing every single game Sunday at 1 p.m. except for the Thursday game at 12 p.m. and then the Saturday game on Christmas Eve. So they have a very comfortable, like, same place, same time every week, which is always a little bit helpful for a youngish team. No prime time, except for the Thanksgiving game, I guess. And then, as you mentioned, the end of the schedule having lots of outdoor games in cold weather with the dome team and Jared Goff's tiny hands. This is set up, I think, to be a team that you can bet against in the second half of the season in some good spots where they're going to be favored by too much. You know what I mean? Like at the Jets and at Carolina.
Yes.
Like at that time, those teams could be completely running out their schedule, and the Lions might be going in as road favorite. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I need to come up with a hot take for the Bears because we're basically agreeing with everything. Like, that's my thesis on this team. I think they are an overperformer, but once you get to that stretch of, back-to-back outdoor games, back-to-back road games later in the year, some cold weather games, a couple games against, like, what if they overperform and Buffalo is struggled a little here and there, and you get Buffalo at a touchdown or under a touchdown? I might lay Buffalo at
oh my God. I kind of want to take Buffalo. Okay, hear me out here. I kind of want to take Detroit +8 now because I feel like Buffalo, like, they don't really have to leave it all on film between now and Thanksgiving. In fact, they kind of ought to be keeping a little bit under their hats, keeping some of their stuff in check, and like they could be not in their final form when they play that Thanksgiving Day game. And then the way the rest of the schedule looks set up to me, it looks like they set the Lions up for pre-Thanksgiving success.
I mean, that'd be nice. That'd be nice for that game.
It looks like
hey,
that looks like what they set them up
surprise Lions coming to town, heading home to the Motor City,
exactly
Buffalo.
Exactly. Like it. And especially because, like, they got that Green Bay game where they got the travel advantage. Green Bay we'll get to Green Bay, but that's kind of the meat of like a really lousy portion of the schedule for Green Bay. They get the bye before they play Dallas, so they get to prep for that game an extra week. And then, like the Chicago, New York Giants back-to-back games. Like, if they're expected to be small dogs and they win those games because they're better teams, like, they're going to have a little bit of heat and momentum heading into that Buffalo match on Thanksgiving, and you could probably see Buffalo under a touchdown, which would be a fun middle, because I do think Buffalo will bring the good plays for that game and hurt the Lions a little bit. So I think a healthy Lions team realistically gets to 10 wins with this schedule, and I think the ceiling for the team itself is an NFC North championship, and what that may bring. Although, I don't have any of that in my pocket just yet.
I think that for that to happen, we need external factors. It's not just, hey, the Lions are successful.
Like you need the Green Bay Packers to trade away their best offensive weapon.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of chicken salad they can make out of the chicken shit up there north of Appleton. But again, it's still a better team on paper, and the quarterback matters so much. So I mean, you're right. That experiment has to fall on its face. The Vikings offensive line is as bad as advertised, and the secondary still stinks. And all of a sudden, it would be a 3-horse race. But I think 10 wins may not get you into the playoffs, but it gets you into the tiebreaker. Like, if you don't make the playoffs with 10 wins in the NFC, it's because you lost a tiebreaker, and that sucks. I agree with that. But like 10 for sure is a look at a wild card spot if not competing for a division if we have some other teams step back. So
Well,
I'm
let's take a look at
cautiously
the
optimistic.
odds. Let's take a look at our odds and see if we can figure out what the best way to attack is. So right now, 2022, 100 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, 55 to 1 to win the NFC. I don't think those are crazy numbers.
I was gonna say, I
There
bet the
might be
Orioles
value
at
on
900 to 1
those.
to win the AL. I've made worse bets, but no, if I were betting it, if you made me, take a hypothetical $100, I'd split it between the win total and to make the playoffs because
You feel like that's coming back. Okay.
one of those is coming back. Like I'd lay more on the win total, just like a 70-30
Yeah,
split.
right. Got it.
So guarantee yourself. That's why I did today in women's soccer. I did both plus monies. I'm like, man, if I go 1-1 again, I'm making like $7. I'm not going to let this get to me today. So I would. I do think the over 6.5 is.
That's a solid look. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a solid look. Again, if they play okay late in the season, some of those, you got to win like one or two of those late season road outdoor games for them. So
yeah. Johnny C notes that BetOnline has them 11 to 1 to win the division. So that requires our standard comment. If you are betting futures, shop
my
around.
God, shop around.
The prices are not consistent from book to book. And if you are not betting the best price at this time of the season, then why are you betting at all? And yeah, we did not pre-shop and present the best price.
No, we're just going to grab the odds from FanDuel.
Yeah, because that's kind of widely available. Yeah, but
yeah, do shop. There's crazy, like every week with golf outrights. I've never placed all my golf outrights at the same book, even when I only make like 4 or 5. Like, well, it's wild. Like, it's like 30, 30, 30, 28, and then also somebody has a 36. Like, you're gonna see this in all of these markets for the most part. Regular season win totals are gonna be close, but again, shop for the best juice.
Yeah. The other important factor to kind of always mention when we're talking futures is market timing. Market entry, timing your market entry is going to give you by far and away the best likelihood of capturing any kind of equity on this stuff, which means if we're betting a Lions future, are you doing it now, or is there a better time during the season to make the play? And I can tell you with pretty solid sincerity that if you're going to get any kind of involvement with the Lions, you got to go out of the gate. I don't think you can wait.
I would agree. Oh, Superbook has 14 to 1 signed collectible, says, if you are out in Vegas anytime soon. So
that's that's probably the best bet to be made right now, frankly. Like considering what the coach of the year odds have done, like they're nuked now. You're not getting much better than 14 to 1 on coach of the year for Dan Campbell right now. And that's kind of the interesting factor.
That's a really solid number. And you know what? There's a lot of iterations where it turns out, like, remember the crazy number you got on the Jags to win the division?
Sure.
Like that was
not as good a number as Urban Meyer first coach
fired. No,
that's
fine. I'm glad we got that paid for some of it. But no, it's like, if you want that, you probably needed it at the beginning of the year, because at a point where if that number gets better, it's because the team sucks, and then you don't want to place it anyway. So you're taking it now, banking on them to surprise, especially that first half of the season.
Yeah, I know. The first 5
and there
games,
are ways
really, the first 4 games. Like, you can squint and convince yourself that 4-0 is not outrageous. 3 of 4 at home. Eagles, Commanders, Vikings, who you went toe-to-toe with twice last year, and then Drew Lock and company come to town. Like talk about an extended preseason. Like that.
And that's the thing too. If you're betting a division price, Drew, the thing about division prices is it's not something that's not going to be up 6 days a week for the rest of the season. If you have a 14 to 1 and they come out of the gate hot and you're worried about that second half of the season, you can easily get yourself some Vikings or Packers or both. If it's working out and you're worried about losing it anyway because that second half of the season's a little rough, like if you are right, if the thesis is right and they play well, they do well through the first half, through the Thanksgiving game maybe, and you can certainly weasel your way out of that for sure. So yeah, I think anything 10 to 1 or better is probably bettable. And like you said too, I think I mentioned hedging, a division ticket like that, which I don't ever hedge hardly. I hate doing that to begin with. It's just in my mind. It's like I'm placing a bet knowing that either it loses or a different bet loses. So I'm calling myself a loser. And if you're getting the best of the number, hedging isn't the worst. But like you said earlier, kind of the same idea is betting against this team a little later in the year. If it's we talk about some of these award markets, how it's such a media hype thing, like, well, this guy's going to win because the media is behind him, and it's going to happen. Like, this guy's just going to win Rookie of the Year because the media loves him. Same kind of thing with some of these teams. If the media wants to just hype up the Lions after a hot start, and the markets are going to react a little bit, and you're probably going to get some value against the Lions later in the year. So I'll be looking for some bet against spots if they get a little warm.
I think realistically, what we're talking about is they head into that Thanksgiving Day game where people are cautiously optimistic, like, hey, the Lions are in the mix to win the NFC North. Can you believe it? And here they're hosting the Bills. Like, if they give the Bills a game there, then the market price you're going to have for fading the Lions down the stretch is going to be pretty sweet. Like, I'm going to take a bunch of shots against them for sure. But I honestly think they can get to Thanksgiving. What is that? 10 games? I think they
third
can
Thursday in November.
6-4. No, yeah, I just want to know like how many games they would have completed at that point. Like 6-4 sounds reasonable to me. 7-3, not impossible. Even 5-5
team, yeah. A 6-4 team with a 6.5 game win total. With that kind of expectation, people are talking about this. Is this a playoff team?
Yeah, exactly. And which brings us to betting strategy. And if this is a playoff team, who benefits from who gets the glory? Because it's not Jared Goff.
No, and yeah, like you just mentioned, the Campbell prices are kind of beat up, but if you believe it's still, are you going to bitch about hitting 20 to 1?
No.
So even though if you get the worst of the number, I
guess this is what I wanted to ask you. Is 20 to 1 Campbell Coach of the Year better than 14 to 1 NFC North? Yes. Because presumably he can get it even if they just get if they win the division, he's getting it. I think it would take something wild for him not to get it if they win the North. If he is a home, if the Lions have a home playoff game,
coming off
are going to their hand is going to automatically draw in Dan Campbell.
Yeah, coming off a 3-win season, winning the division gets it there for you. So I think maybe if you do bet the division, maybe split it up with some Dan Campbell and you get. But yeah, there's probably better value, not only because it's a bigger price, but like you said, let's say the Packers are just good again. We don't see a big drop off in that offense. Everything clicks. They don't have injuries. Packers win 13, 14 games. And the Lions winning 10 or 11 still might get you there on Coach of the Year, getting into the playoffs for the first time in 6-7 years, getting a playoff game, coming off a 3-win season. I think you still get it. So, I think my main focus for the Lions betting this year is I will have a regular season win total over. I'll probably have some make the playoff yes. If I can find a 4 to 1 or better, I'd be tickled.
Is that what your price is for playoff yes? You want a 4 to 1?
Yeah. And then Campbell and some division futures. I won't take NFC or Super Bowl.
I make them better than 20% chance to make the playoffs by a lot. I think 20% is very
playoffs. I mean, you take the VIG out of the market, it's a little bit off there, but I mean I'm close-ish. I'm happy with 20%. Or 20% implied on the odds. So that's what I would want to bet if I had to tie money up for that long. I need more of an edge if I'm going to bet season-long futures for sure. And Stephen Lackman says there is a 4-1 for playoff. Yes, so I'll probably bet that. So I don't know. Final Lions thoughts before we just shit on Chicago for 40 minutes.
Restore the roar.
It's the year of the cat.
Let's restore the roar.
All right. Now, Drew, we're splitting these up in podcast form.
Yes.
So could you please? I'm going to take a 5-second count in my head, and then I need you to do it again.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are back. Our next team in our NFC North preview is, of course, the Chicago Bears, a team near and dear to many of the folks in the Betsperts family's heart, and a team that, I'll be honest with you, going to have a tough time finding any silver lining for the Chicago Bears for the upcoming 2022 season. We're going to do our best not to dump the sewage takes on them, but the Bears in the last 4 or 5 years were such a I don't want to say predictable, because it's not like I made tons of money getting them right, but like it was such an arc. It was such a familiar arc of how a team kind of turns to spoiled milk,
Yeah,
and
it's like having the baby to save yourself from a divorce. Like, it didn't
it's
work.
tale
Like,
as old as time.
Yeah,
Tale as old as time.
Trading up to draft a quarterback to save your job, and how many times have we seen that shit?
Yeah,
Pace
out,
Nagy out.
So yeah, and did they need a change? Obviously, yes. Like, that was an extremely toxic front office head coaching combination, and there are still lots of unanswered questions about where it all went wrong for the Bears under the Nagy regime. But certainly the fact that they did not handle the Mitch Trubisky development process well is this kind of the key sin. And then they put an aging roster around, a team that didn't have their quarterback and wide receiver answers figured out, and ultimately could only hope for purgatory and making a playoff game and then not winning one. So it was a very underwhelming, unimpressive couple of years there, and the end was due. I thought they needed to move on. The last year of the Ryan Pace experience was so bad, though. He gave away lots of capital. He left the cupboard absolutely bare. Like, tough to say. Actually, you know what? If Bill O'Brien didn't exist in our consciousness and what he did to the Houston Texans on his way out of town, if that didn't exist, we would be more appalled by the state of the franchise that was left in place as Ryan Pace was let go.
Pace took the key to the executive bathrooms and just straight up on the way out. Like, and it's not like, even if he would have been attempting to try to keep things in good shape for the next regime, it was so far gone at that point already. And yes, it was time to move on for them. 2021 saw, what was it, 6-11. They were fired sometime in January. It was one of those where, I get it. You move up to take a quarterback if you really believe in it, because it's super important. But now you're hamstrung in a bunch of other places. And if it doesn't turn out good, then you're hamstrung everywhere. So, like, the Fields thing, and this is where we're going to be kind of dooms and glooms. The Fields thing kind of has to work out. Otherwise, this is a long rebuild. As much as we said all these nice things about the Lions rebuild, like it or not, the Bears are in a rebuild right now. Like, the defense from 4 years ago has taken a big step back. They've lost some big pieces from that. Their offensive line is shambless. They have 30 wide receiver threes on the roster now. They just traded for another one today in N'Keal Harry. Like, they lost, the biggest part of their passing game from the past few years in the offseason. And they trade. You lose Mac. You lose. You got Robert Quinn. Just I think that's a trade that's going to happen. He's just not coming to camp. So it is what'd you say? Empty cupboard. Empty cupboard is it's an insult to empty cupboards because you're going to have some stuff absolutely turn around. And I'll get to that when we get to the field stuff. But yeah, the win total was 6.5 and they won like weeks 16 and 17, I think. So they scared it, but ended up, I think the Vikes beat them pretty bad in the final game there. What was, I'm guessing, a meaningless game for both teams. And they did stay under their season win total. And then, yeah, it was a bottom 5 offense. And then you lose, A-Rob, and the defense just been taking steps back. Akeem Hicks walked, Mac traded. Like, it went from a bottom 5 offense, and they really did very little to address it in the offseason. And the defense is in need of, I don't know, a little bit of not a personality, an identity. They need to kind of rebuild that up. That said, Eberflus. Are we doing Eberflus or Eberflus?
Eber?
I think Eber. I'm going to go with Eber. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. That's how little audio content I've taken in on this. I've been just doing reading. My teacher friend said that to me once, and we should use this anytime I do a tennis podcast. You should never make fun of somebody for mispronouncing a word, because it means they read it in a book, guys. That means they read, and reading is fundamental. But yeah, the Eber, I'll get to the Eberflus stuff, but that's kind of like the silver lining for all of this for me. And I'll get to some silver lining amid the doom and gloom is the coaching change has to take hold, and it has to take hold fast. Similar to what we saw in Detroit. We're like, hey, this was the right guy for the job. Like, they might not be good this year, but we see some glimpses and glimmers. Like, that has to work. Otherwise, yeah, I'm looking for nice things to say, and I don't have a ton. I don't know. What'd you think of last year, other than it was just 18 weeks of waiting for Nagy to be fired?
Well, they started out 3-2 somehow, which was crazy. And they were among the worst. And this is, I think, 2 years in a row they started out somewhat successful. And like the major takeaway was, well, this is the worst blank and blank team of all time. Like, they're just not anywhere close to the results here.
Their first 8 games there, Drew, before their first 9 games before their week 10 bye, 8 of those 9 teams were playoff teams.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, the Lions didn't make the playoffs.
Beat
and then
2 of them head to head.
But yeah, their first 2 games were against the Super Bowl teams. They played the Rams, the Bengals.
That's right.
They beat
You're
the
right.
Bengals.
You're right.
I mean, they played the Packers. They played the Niners. The Steelers and Raiders were in the playoffs, I guess. But I mean, they played the Browns. Those are all playoff teams. The Lions are the only non-playoff team they played before their bye. And I mean, and again, they faced the Packers again. The rest of the season was a lot easier from that standpoint, not playing many playoff teams outside the Cardinals and Pack. But it was a tough start for the season, and I mean, I don't know even an easier schedule would have, shown different results, truthfully.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I think this was coming. It was obvious, and and yeah, like the turnover of the roster this last offseason is, I mean, none of the moves in a vacuum were indefensible, considering what this team ought to be thinking about in terms of their hopes and dreams and goals for the 2022 campaign, right? Like the Khalil Mack trade, probably the perfect example. Like, you turned that contract into an asset by flipping it, which was good ultimately, but it does nothing to help you try to win a game in 2022. And some of the additions, they swung on some, actually, like, man, I don't even remember it now, but one of the first free agency move, they offered a guy maybe it was a defensive tackle, like a big check, and obviously basically telegraphing to Akeem Hicks that they weren't going to make an effort to re-sign him. And then that was a head scratcher. And then the guy failed his physical. They didn't even end up bringing him in. And so like there's been moments like that during the offseason where it's been like, is Ryan Poles in over his head? Like, or is he just, he's going to make some mistakes, but he has got an impossible task considering what was available from a draft capital and from a player, just a player personnel contract situation. They lost a
in your heart of
lot
hearts, though. How do you
experience.
feel like right now? Because with Ryan Poles,
Oh, I feel like this is you take Justin Fields out of the picture.
No, but how do you feel about Ryan Poles? I didn't phrase that well. Like, I have to
Oh.
give Ryan Poles a full incomplete because it's such a small part of what we're going to see out of this this management team. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Some of the stuff could absolutely backfire, but his hands were, like you said, his hands were so tied by with what Pace left him. I don't know if you can blame him for anything at this point.
I think I'm okay saying he gets it.
Benefits of doubts are being given.
Like I say, he gets it. He gets what he's got. He's not delusional about where system he's in. Like, and I say that just based on letting the entire aging defense walk out the door. Like, that was the correct decision. And that was a tough decision, but they had to do it. And they now have a very young / very poor defensive roster from a talent standpoint. Couple bright spots on there, but lots and lots of holes. No depth, period. And that may not matter much because the offense is where the rebuild starts for them. And they have a quarterback in Justin Fields who's a bit of an unknown. But the pieces that you have around him are not an NFL team.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing with year 2 of this quarterback. And it's funny too. We'll get to the schedule, but like he's playing all the other quarterbacks that got drafted last year too.
Well,
like right off the gate, it's Fields, Lance probably. He plays Mack, he plays Mills. Like it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
It sucks that like we're gonna have to hear about it all week, every week when they play each other. But like the Fields year 2 that's the silver lining that has to happen despite so many things that are going against the young man immediately off the bat. What were you saying?
Let me ask you about this offensive roster. Last year's Houston Texans team was the worst offensive roster that I can remember in all my years handicapping football.
That's fair.
Is this
them rated pretty lowly?
Is this offensive roster better or worse than that team?
So, and again, like the biggest problem, and sacks are a quarterback stat for the most part, but it doesn't help when the offensive line is bad. The offensive line not only didn't get better, it probably got worse. They just switched the order of the bags of garbage and got rid of a couple pieces that weren't half bad. And the ones that they got rid of and replaced, it's not like they did any upgrading. So the offensive line continuing to be that bad and then trying to transition Fields to a new kind of offense, and then losing your best receiver, and probably worse. Like they have higher upside. I think Fields is a high ceiling if we can finally get him somewhere. But you have a couple of okay running backs. Like you have a couple of okay running backs who can catch some passes, but the offensive line is horrible. Justin Fields is a complete unknown if he can play at this level. And your wide receiver room is bottom 5. Like even, this Jones guy that they drafted is like our age from Tennessee. The best part is like he was like some sort of returner / scat back for chunks of his career at college. Like they're giving him Cordarrelle Patterson comps, which apparently means he'll be good in 2030. When he signs with his 5th franchise. So like I don't even know, like they
future
did make
Atlanta Falcons standout in 2030. Velus Jones Jr.
Yeah, they made an attempt, but they didn't get anyone early, and that's what happens when you leverage your picks to move up for a quarterback, like they did the year prior, and they leveraged some other picks for some trades in previous years. So they didn't have draft capital, and it shows for what they have. Their offensive line and their second and their receiving room is, they're both. When those two spots are bottom 5 in the league, you're not going to have a good offense. Like you're not even going to. There's no way you're getting out of the bottom 5 in offenses. So it's probably
Yeah.
a decent chance this could be the worst offense we see this year.
Is the left tackle really Larry Borum?
Guess.
Is that really the blindside tackle for Justin Fields?
Yeah, and I think he was a right tackle in college too. So
I mean, I
like,
guess when you have a left guard that's as good as Cody Whitehair, it's okay putting Larry Borum next to him, right?
so like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Cody or Borum played the right side. He was a right guard, right tackle in college. So yeah,
Oh,
they took
okay.
a guy who out of his natural position, put him on the blind side, and then the rest of the offensive line sucked. So it is. I'm not saying Larry Borum is bad. Like he was fine in college. Apparently, he was good enough to get drafted in the middle rounds. But like this as a whole,
Better than you or me. Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's better than if you put me out there. I don't have the footwork, but yes, this is. I am not hopeful for Fields year 2, and I do want to. So here's my silver lining, and
Yeah.
mark this down, Bears fans, because this is the only silver lining you're getting for this entire section of this podcast. Is the coaching is slightly unknown, and Eberflus really, really, really did turn around a horrible Colts defense. Now it did help that they drafted, Darius Leonard.
Some really good players.
But who's to say Darius Leonard would have thrived in another system with another coach? I've heard,
sure.
and again, you get nothing but this sort of quotes. Nobody's going to talk shit about their coaching camp, but you're seeing a lot of quotes of just like everybody is pretty pumped. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I think players are upset when a coach is like, "Oh, I don't think there's any upset players." I don't think anyone cared for Nagy or where the direction of the team was going. And a lot of them, aren't people who were on the team the other year anyway. So Eberflus, chicken and the egg, Patrick. But Eberflus made several other players on that team pretty good. And I believe he was the guy, and this is another testament to like his character or what people believe in him. He was hired with McDaniel. And then he backed out of that deal. And they kept him anyway. Like they made when Reich came on, like I think it was the GM, it was probably Ballard. Like he made the case for Reich to keep Eberflus, and it worked out.
Right.
It made a big difference. That defense really took some steps forward in 18 and 19. He is, I think, a good leader of men. I think you might have something similar to what you saw with Dan Campbell, where it's like, I don't know if this guy is going to fix everything, but he's the right guy for the job right now. And then, coming along with that is this Getsy character who I know even less about, but he did move up pretty quickly at Green Bay. And apparently he worked under Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. And Joe Moorhead's known as a really, really high end, like an RPO guru.
Okay.
Like he was an early adopter of it. He has great RPO schemes. So you have a offensive coach who goes up to Green Bay and knows a shitload about RPOs, which is not a good fit really for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who I want to say they do run RPOs in Green Bay, but he throws on like 90% of them because he's just scheming people open or looking people open. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's that good. Like having someone who's going to be RPO heavy, understands implementing that scheme, can mask a bad offensive line. If you can put a good game plan together to take advantage of the strengths of his scrambling, and like we talked about, Justin Fields was sacked 36 times. He only started 10 games. If he played in a couple other ones, but that is a lot of sacks for somebody who didn't even play the entire season. And a lot of it was they're trying to use him as this drop back quarterback at times. And I really think if anybody's going to understand that, this Getsy cat has to know this is not Aaron Rodgers. This is the guy I was actually meant to coach because I have this knowledge. And you mask the bad offensive line. And God, I wrote something down here that I absolutely have to find. So, and the Nagy, the frustration that Bears fans have to feel. I'm sorry, Chicago too. If you're a Chicago fan, Tony La Russa is kind of nagging you right now. You've had a run of coaches who've been annoying at best, but they just would not run RPOs with him. They refused to do it. they only did it, I think, 19 times, it says, and he averaged 7 yards a play on those. So
Wow.
they 19 RPOs in 12 games with a running quarterback, and yes, 7.2 yards per play when they did run those. And you can say, well, if they did it more, maybe it wouldn't have been as effective. Fuck, give me 5 yards a play. I would be more than happy with that. So this is a lot of ifs and nuts, candy nuts, Merry Christmas. But if Eberflus is a leader who can get more out of this anemic defense and make some pieces that maybe nobody saw playing well this year better than they are, you get above replacement level player from some of these defensive pieces, and Getsy can put an offense into place that actually uses Justin Fields' strengths. This team might not lose 17 games. Because if those things don't happen, if this offense looks anything like we saw last year, and this defense is as bad as advertised, they're liable to lose every damn game. Like, there's no automatic wins in this schedule.
No, there's not. And there's a lot of, by the way, there's a lot of really good pass rushes.
And we didn't even get to, didn't even get to, again, this is the theme so far. The secondary is horrible.
Well, wait, before moving off of Fields year 2, just looking at the depth chart, who leads this team in targets?
Like, who will lead this team, or who has the most targets?
Who will lead this team in targets?
I don't even know who, like, it's got to be Mooney. It'll be Mooney. Like, Mooney is your number one right now. I'd say Komet is going to get a lot of work, but I don't know. I think it's going to be Mooney and then Komet and the running backs. Like, I think there might be you have a wide receiver, and then it's a bunch of non-wide receivers. You have Komet and a running back, and then maybe none of these other receivers have like 50-yard or 50-catch seasons. I mean, Byron Pringle, man, it's a Equiminius St. Brown is the worst St. Brown. Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle, a rookie. Shimba Webster, Tajay Sharp. There's a guy whose name I remember from years ago in Tennessee. So it is.
It's a bad.
It's Mooney. Bad. I'm going to remember. I'm going to write this down. I'm calling it Mooney. Mooney leads the team in targets if he stays healthy, I suppose.
I think we've come the long way to get here, but this is my lowest graded offense coming into a regular season in a long time.
Yeah. The floor is 32.
Yeah. And
the ceiling,
as you mentioned, the turnover on defense, they have lost a lot of meaningful, both locker room leaders and just in general talent on the defensive side of the ball. Not even stopping at Mack and Hicks, but in the linebacker and the linebacking core and the secondary core as well. But they still retain Robert Quinn, who's a decent pass rusher. They still have Roquan Smith, who could definitely do a damn decent Darius Leonard impression in an Eberflus system. I'm not giving up on Eddie Jackson, even though he had a poor season last year. I'm not giving up on some of the other kind of projects on this squad, but it's definitely like the ceiling for the defense is average. It's not going to carry this team to wins, which means
and we'll see if Quinn is on the team. Like, there's still heavy rumors that Quinn would be traded, and I don't know.
I would take whatever I can get from him at this point.
I would absolutely try to get some picks and maybe a number 2 wide receiver to go with all your number 3s, or an offensive lineman. If you can give me a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, and some combination of picks, I'd be ecstatic.
Yep. What's your general expectation for the secondary here? We have a expected starting left cornerback, Jalen Johnson, who I thought was one of the few bright spots from the Pace era from a drafting standpoint. I thought he showed you he could play last year, especially as a rookie. He might be a decent CB1. But the rest of this crew is, anyone's guess.
Yeah, that was the joke you made about what if who's our guy? Akuda is good. Throw somewhere else. Like that's gonna be the case. If
Yeah,
if
right.
if he continues his hey, he's good, the rest of the secondary is really some of it's camp battles. Like that's not good.
Yeah,
When you have camp battles at basically 3 out of 4 spots, and
you sure
the
do.
the one you have filled is a sophomore, like essentially like a 23-year-old kid. So it's going to be worse than the Lions secondary, I believe. And
CB2 right now penciled in as the rookie from Washington, Kyler Gordon. Is that
yeah,
right?
that
Oof.
again, it'll be a camp battle, but there's a decent chance you'll be
Oof.
starting a rookie out at that other corner, which is a good way to throw to that guy.
Yeah, Nickelback, Tavon Young, who they just brought in. He could be a CB2 in a average league average defense. Oh man, dude, this is not great.
No, and again, yeah, if Quinn walked or Quinn's traded and they've lost Hicks and Mac, it takes a lot of starch out of a big chunk of the defense, and then the secondary is probably going to struggle. So it's a team that's probably doesn't have a good offense, has a bad secondary. So
Yep.
Biggest point differential on the table.
Ooh, definitely.
I kind of want to look at the schedule. Somebody did bring that up in the chat. Lowest record 14-1. Worst record.
Well, keep that in mind as we go through the rest of these previews, because my modal expectation for this team is like 3-13, 3-14. And I don't know if anyone goes under 3 wins, but that's realistically where we're looking at here. Now, their schedule is not super hard, which helps. A lot of coin flips on there, at least in the eyes of the bookmakers. There's a lot of coin flips on there. But it doesn't start easy at all. Out of the gate, San Francisco and then Green Bay on Sunday Night Football. Yikes. And then you get a brief reprieve hosting the Houston Texans, who is your most closest reflection of yourself in the current NFL in terms of talent. So maybe you can get one at home against the Texans. But then, lots of other games where you're going to be more than a field goal dog. How do you think they match up against sort of the other expected to be in the bottom of their division teams like the Giants and the Commanders?
So, I mean, just looking at it, again, it's another one of those. We talked about the Lions had a lot of games that were cold weather road games. It's like, oh, yeah, we get to play bad teams. Yeah, but it's cold and it's November and it's on the road. Same kind of thing here, too, where Atlanta is definitely on the table to be the worst team, but you got to go to Atlanta, and then you have a back-to-back. Jets, not likely to be some surprise 10-win team. It's supposed to be a bad team again. Again, it's second week of a back-to-back. Philly only giving 2.5 at Philly late in the season. I wonder if that number's there once we get around to it. And then again at Detroit late in the season, it's not outdoors, but it's definitely a road game for one of your shitty teams. Granted, yes, you are going to, no matter what happens, you will play at Detroit every year. But a lot of these teams that you're close with, there are a lot of road games, and they're, again, Minnesota, that might be a game where Vikings are playing for something and the Bears are not. So I don't know if you're the Bears and you have some players that are dinged up, if you're putting them out there to play a home game. I mean, there's a certain bit of pride there. I know that's a rivalry. It's not as big as the Green Bay one, but there's a lot of these coin flip games where it's like other external factors are against them. So, yeah, they probably beat Houston, Washington, and then maybe Atlanta on the road. Like, there's your 3 wins, I suppose.
Yeah, that's basically where
that Atlanta-Chicago game could be.
It could all-time bad, yeah. Oh boy, it's gonna suck. You know what will make week 3 Houston versus Chicago interesting?
That Houston has a better quarterback.
Lovie Smith. coming home.
That's true. That's true.
Lovey Smith. We got the revenge game for Lovey Smith in Chicago at Soldiers Field. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and we already talked about it. It will be, boy, just a further indictment of Chicago. Like, what if Davis Mills just roasts their ass,
cooks their asses,
just puts their ass in the jackpot? Like that'll be the whole week. Is like, oh man, they traded up for this guy, and they could have traded back and got Davis Mills, because it's so easy to do this when you're looking back at it 2 years from now.
So easy.
Yeah, I'm really good at handicapping the games that already happened. But yeah, that one for sure. That's their biggest. That's their biggest advantage.
It's their most likely win on the schedule. Yeah.
I would like, if I had to bet them to win one game, I would actually bet that Thursday night Washington coming to town rather.
You want to see Carson Wentz on the other side of the field when you're betting on the Bears?
Yeah, I like Davis Mills more than Carson Wentz right now. So
Eberflus should have the answers for Carson Wentz.
This is true. This
both
is
in
true.
Indy last year.
Another point too. Our guy Getsy, the OC, maybe they do. They're going to know quite a bit about Green Bay and the offense, stealing a Green Bay offensive assistant.
Well, the problem is
Green Bay's
defense. I mean, the over/under for sacks by the Green Bay defense week 2 Sunday Night Football
7.5.
7. I was going to say 7, 8. I mean, this is the other thing. Aiden Hutchinson gets to play this sack of an offensive line twice. Does that clinch him the DRO?
I was gonna say he gets to play the Bears and the Vikings 4 times. Like, those are bad offensive lines.
Yeah.
Like, he could have 8 sacks in those 4 games. That's a big chunk of what he needs. That might be enough. And yeah.
Look where he goes. Look where he's playing the Bears for the second time. Right in that sweet spot when everybody's figuring out their awards. You know what we'll call that week? That's the Jamar Chase week.
I'm in on that.
So here's
and that's the thing too. I mentioned, like, hey, here's some bad offensive lines. Like, I'd have to go back and look. And Dan was kind enough. If you are in the deep dive Discord, Dan was kind enough to post these schedules in there for you guys if you want them. If not, you better get over there and find them. But the Lions go the Jets, Carolina, Chicago. They go Jacksonville, Minnesota, Jets, Carolina, Chicago. We need to go rewind and talk about betting Hutchinson at any price.
At any price. The other things I wanted to note about the Chicago schedule, which are interesting to me. No situational stuff, no weirdness at all in terms of the timing or flying or whatever. Travel, a lot of advantage spots travel-wise, so where people have to come to them on arduous trips. Not a lot of spots where they are at a disadvantage for rest or travel, other than a couple of key ones, notably that Atlanta game and the Dallas game. And then as you look at these current look-ahead lines, if we're right and everybody kind of figures out that this is the 32nd best offense in the NFL by halfway through the season, then you're not getting Philadelphia at -2.5 week 15. You're not getting Buffalo at -7. You're not even getting Detroit at -1.5 probably, right? Like, this Green Bay -4 week 13. Like, you could have a real good laugh about that when the time comes. So a lot of potential revision to these expected lines as we kind of actually figure out how bad the Bears offense is. And in that vein, getting to their 6.5 win total seems utterly impossible.
Yeah. I said I could make a case for all wins over. I don't know if I have that anymore. But just like Fields has to absolutely jive with
Fields
the offense.
He could kick. Yeah. I mean, what if he's
there
good?
were so many coin flips on that schedule. Like, if you lose this under 6.5, you were going to lose it by 3 games. Like, Fields is going to come through and they're going to win 8 coin flip games because they have so many coin flip games on the schedule, and they're just, if Fields can lead them to a bunch of wins just on the back of him being used properly, they're going to win a bunch of games. Now, what kind of percentage chance would you put? Hey, Fields is just so good they win 9 games. 4%?
There's other ways to bet into that if that's what you think could happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like can Fields win comeback player of the year in his second year? I don't know if that's a deal.
Wow.
That's not really a market.
Everybody knows Justin Fields died in the Battle of Little Bighorn. What this handicap presupposes is, what if he's good? I don't think.
Was that from Little Big Man?
No, that was Royal Tannenbaums.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
The 6.5 win total is a real mindfuck.
An aberration.
I don't know. I just, the positive confluence of events that has to happen to get you there is it's just too rich. And honestly, I'm curious if you bet.
Truthfully, I think it's only one thing. I think Justin Fields plays well above expectation because he's used properly, and they can win 7 games because they have so many coin flips. But again, I don't think that the chance of that happening in year one is high enough because of the pieces he has around him. Even if he elevates his game to a crazy level, he still has bad receivers, bad offensive line, and a first-time essentially play caller. So it's such a tough ask. So yeah, Bears under 5.5, 4.5, 3.5.
I like it. All the unders on the Bears is fine by me. Any books in Illinois hang alt win totals?
I believe Caesars and William Hill.
Because is this one of those things where there's enough Chicago Bears money in the market that the number's a little high?
It's not really a thing regional, and now that there's so many states legal at like FanDuel, like they're not going to see regional buy. Like you saw that at first when it was just Jersey, and you'd get all this money on like the Jets and stuff. But now that these books are, FanDuel's in like 30 states, you don't see that regional bias as much. I don't know. They're not going to move the number just in one municipality, I don't believe. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it is. Again, we see tweets about this. It's the most bet regular season win total on the board to the under, and it's still standing strong at 6.5 juice to the under.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, man, expectations for this team are low, as we've covered in great detail. But are they low enough? And I think the answer is no. I think that answer is no.
Do you think to make the playoffs no is short? Shouldn't that be like? Because honestly, like, let's say Fields absolutely sun runs for 17 damn weeks. Like, what is their ceiling if he plays like where he's getting MVP talk? He's playing so well. They're still not winning 10 games. Like 8, 9 is really, really, really high for them. So, like, that should probably be minus 10,000.
Yeah, I think so too.
We should clip that when they make the playoffs.
Yeah. No, here's the key for me, really, is that like there's a lot of Bears
chat right now too. That's a good point.
Least points scored.
Their second favorite in least points scored, but they have a 6.5 win total.
No, that's absolutely insane. Who is lowest in least points scored? Is it Seattle? Houston? It's got to be Seattle. Who's the worst offense? I have the Bears clearly 32nd best offense. Who's the leader in the market and fewest points scored?
Probably. Jets, it's not like Houston added a bunch. Steven, tell us.
It's got to be the Texans.
I'm not looking at this. Houston.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Super Bowl can't bet NFC.
No.
North,
So this is a question I guess
none of these are bettable.
With the tone of camp stories for the Bears is going to be probably surprisingly positive, right? Like, people are there. There are all these new faces. Everybody expects them to suck. And then there's lots of stories. Well, these guys look better than we thought. And this Mooney's making plays. Velus Jones might be a guy. like Justin Fields looking comfortable in the offense. Like, I feel like the Bears media is going to do their honest effort the way they do every year to really lift this team up in terms of hope as you get closer to the season. Do you think that trickles into the market at all? Like, is it worth it waiting on firing on all unders for the Bears, or is this going to go even more aggressively against them as people kind of synthesize the roster changes?
Unless they trade Robert Quinn for a receiver that can make a difference, which he's not worth. I mean, you're not going to get that sort of comp because I'm sure that just the way it would work with the salary, like, no, like, I don't think anyone's going to believe these coaches. Like, yeah, N'Keal Harry, that was the missing piece. Like, we're totally going to be a competitor this year. Like, I think enough people are probably pretty well entrenched in this team is going to stink. Now, again, a team like this can be a bet against team if it can come out of the gates hot like it did last year against some teams that it probably shouldn't have beat. But we're starting Niners, Green Bay. Like, 85 to 90% chance this team is 0-2. It's hard to get any sort of hype around an 0-2 team, even if they beat the Houston Texans. Again, at that point, you've got beaten by two good teams, and you beat the only team that might be worse than you besides Atlanta. And then, road games at the Giants and Vikings, even if you go 1-1, and let's say you get to Washington, like, if you could end up 3-3 after 6, I still don't think anyone is excited about this team because, like, yeah, they beat the Texans, they beat the Commanders. It's going to be weird to say, and then maybe they got past the Giants or Vikings. So even 3-3, it just doesn't feel like there's any chance in the preseason or early in the season for this team to get hyped up. So I don't think there's like an attackable spot to come back against this team. Maybe the opposite of what we did with Detroit, where you could
sell today.
Well, sell today, and then take it to, hey, guess what? Detroit's coming into town late in the season with Goff. Like, we said that's a sell spot for Detroit. That means it's a buy spot for Chicago. Same thing maybe goes for, oh God, I'm trying to see Phillies. Phillies cold weather.
Are you gonna have the guts on January 1st to wake up and make a bet on the Bears at like 3+3 at home that week? I guess that's the dream. You need 3.5. We'll say 3.5. You're firing Bears.
Flat. I'd take it.
Okay, so here's the question then. This is the key to this entire.
And sell again later.
This is the key then. Are the Bears trying to win this year? Is this a team that wants to win footbl games in the year 2022? Or is this a team that wants to, like, okay, so paint for me, like, you were going through if Fields clicks, blah blah blah. Yeah.
So what would sell you, not you because you're too smart, like a dumb GM, or just like media and the whole, the whole all the machinations that go on that drive the hype that get a guy hired. What is better for a head coach? It's like, hey, that guy turned around a really shitty team year one. We should look at him. Or, hey, that guy really set his team up for long-term success by not playing well for a couple of years, and now look at him. Like, it's for sure year one. So, like, if I'm Eberflus, like, instant success might not be the best long-term, but for the longevity of your head coaching career, it is for sure the best. Like, he's absolutely trying to win. Whereas,
well, listen, think about what we just said about Dan Campbell.
Too pragmatic.
No, think about what we just said about Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell won 3 games last year.
Yep.
He was, by every measurable kind of metric, he did not do his job in year one as a coach. And yet, I think everyone comes into year 2 thinking that is a team that played hard for that guy and that he showed you enough even in a losing campaign to have some thread of optimism for 2022 and beyond.
I think that's a
Eberflus
possibility.
goes,
Yeah, that's a
like,
possibility for the
dude,
Bears.
if the Bears are playing hard and covering double-digit spreads for the months of October and November, but just can't seem to find that first win,
that's best case
that's good.
scenario. Sure.
That's good.
No,
and then you get to the end of the season and Fields puts together a little magic against Philly, Detroit, Minnesota, right? I mean, it sucks that Buffalo's in the mix there because you're not going to beat them probably. But if they put together a little magic at the end of their season, and let's say they just win their last two, they beat Detroit, they beat Minnesota, and Fields is all of a sudden like got control of the locker room, has the buy-in from understands the system they're trying to run and is operating it well. Like, this team finishing 2-15 and winning their last two games is probably their best outcome for the 2022 campaign.
Yeah,
Am I crazy?
I'm just trying to think of how many years we've seen teams do what the Lions did last year, where it was like, hey, they lost a lot of close games, but they
usually
played
one
super
every
hard.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but man, it just felt like an out. It felt like the best of it, though. Like, we hadn't seen a situation where it's like, man, they are set up. They have buy-in on the coach. They played their rookies a lot. They have a good offensive and defensive line. They have some good young receivers. Like, this team is like one or two pieces, like a lockdown corner and a quarterback away from like a 12-win team. And once you get some more experience for the young guys, like with the Bears, it just feels like at the end of the year, we're still going to say like, yeah, they covered some games, but like, can Fields do that repeatedly? Where it's like he was really putting the load on his back. None of these receivers stepped up consistently. You'd have sporadic, highlight games from one or the other, but we never saw consistency. Like, you still need reasons to be excited for the next year. But I mean, you're still correct, Drew. Like, getting that 2-15 season where they cover a bunch of spreads. Like, the Lions were one of the best ATS teams. I think they were the only team who had a positive ATS record that finished below 500 on the year. Like, they were amazing against the spread. So, yeah, that's best case scenario. And yeah, as far as betting plan of attack, like it says there, it is selling the Bears now. Like, if they win 7 games, I'll go down with that ship. That's fine. Like, that's going in the hopper. I'm going to have like 15 regular season win totals this year. Let's see if I can parlay them.
The last point, I agree with that. The last point I wanted to kind of make or ask you, what's your read on? Okay, is he playing? Is he actually? Oh, he's not playing Lawrence, but he's playing everybody else. He's playing Lance. He's playing Mack. He's playing Mills, and he's playing Wilson.
Yeah.
In those 4 games, Justin Fields' head-to-head record is what against those players?
I mean, even though I like Mills better, I think they can win that game. Like, probably 2-2. Like, the Jags' big step forward, I think is probably a little overblown. That feels hot takey in the Twitter.
They're not they're not playing. They're not playing the Jags for whatever. That Lawrence is the only guy who's not going head to head against.
Oh yeah. Never mind. Well, then that one's not going to happen anyway. But the Jets are still a beatable team. The Jets, I like what the Jets are doing. When we get to them, I'll have nice things to say about them. I still don't think they're going to win many games.
Oh man, this Bears team is going to be.
This was good. Oh. For the first one, this was good, I thought.
Oh yeah, no, those were these. I feel like we picked 2 teams that we had some pretty specific, easy, straightforward, low hanging fruit point of view to really drop on people. We're gonna get to one next time around with the Minnesota Vikings. I'll spoil it. I don't know what the fuck to think about that team. I really don't know what the hell. But yeah, it's these 2 were good warm up week 1 preseason games for us.
I think we'll have a spirited debate on what Green Bay's offense can be, and then Minnesota, yeah, they have some big question marks in the same spots that Minnesota is just Detroit with more skill. Like, or excuse me, the Bears with more skill. I wouldn't want to compare those offensive lines, but it's like, hey, they have an established quarterback and good receivers, but their offensive line and their secondary is kind of stinky. So, I mean, the Vikings are a couple injuries away from being the Bears. which is they're fragile, I believe. To quote our friend, I was going to say Plus EV Analytics, but I suppose Taleb, the original source material for that. So don't you know Minnesota yet? We'll get to Minnesota and Green Bay tomorrow, Wednesday, and we'll release those podcasts Thursday and Friday. And with that, thank you. Thank you. If you're in the YouTube chat, hit a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, follow at Deep Dive Pod. We'll put up some thoughts afterwards on this. And let's go Lions.